something hours. The sweat on my back's got my shirt soaked and sour. And oh, it's already gone. Second night's coming and I'm spinning back around. We're all caught up, can't hear or feel the sound. And oh, it's already gone. And here comes the feeling when you don't got nothing, and all you want to do is get up and start running. You can't hide long cause you know it's gonna start up again. Here's one thing that I know for certain, this life's too short to be worrying about you hurting for long. Oh, it's already gone. But money's not something that's free. Since the roll of the dice never rolls back to me. And oh, it's already gone. A bird in my hand, two cans in the other, start spinning around. Now here comes another. And oh, it's already gone. And here comes the feeling when you don't got nothing, and all you want to do is get up and start running. You can't hide long cause you know it's gonna start up again. Here's one thing that I know for certain, this life's too short to be worrying about you hurting for long. Oh, it's already gone. And all you want to do is get up and start running. You can't hide long cause you know it's gonna start up again. Here's one thing that I know for certain, this life's too short to be worried about you hurting for long. Whoa, it's already gone. Already gone. It's already gone. Go.
What is up, Jags fans? We are here on a Tuesday night to talk Jags head coaching search updates. Now, we had a little bit of a sprinkle thrown in today with the Robert Salah interview was put in there today, so we can talk a little bit about Robert Salah. I guess that'll be something interesting to talk about. But we're also going to talk about the coaches that we have interviewed, and then we're going to talk about some of the coaches that we have yet to interview. But I want to go a little bit further today. I want to kind of talk about what the current schemes of these coaches look like, whether they're defensive coaches or offensive coaches. I don't think we've interviewed any special teams coaches, which is sad to me because I've always said that special teams coaches make the best head coaches. Back in the day, for all of you young people, special teams coaches were like the hot commodity to be hired, but now everybody wants the coordinators. I get it. I do think, though, special teams coaches, like, they manage different types of players. They manage, like, fringe roster guys. They have to make decisions quick. They have to game plan for all different types of things. Harbaugh's a special teams guy. I don't know. I've just always been a special – whatever. Get in the comments. This is a fan show, so I try to hit every comment. I may have a guest on tonight, one of my buddies who's become kind of radio famous here lately. So he may join us in a little bit to talk things Jags. But get in the comments and let me know where you want to see the coaching search go. Now, and I know everybody wants Ben Johnson. Like, obviously, I get that. My head's not in the sand. That's okay if you want Ben Johnson. Who else? Why do you want Ben? Like, come on, let's it's dead season. We gotta talk all things Jags. Before we jump into the comments, check out the video description. It's got some cool things in there. It's got Racha Sriacha, the link to buy you some hot sauce. This is a sriracha sauce made by a Jags fan. This is not a paid advertisement. This is just a good Jags fan that makes this sriracha sauce. It's affordable. It's delicious. I put it on a lot of different foods. Gluten-free. Yeah, there you go. So check it out. You can get the teal logo if you put something Jags in the notes or whatever. But one of our channel members makes it, and he does a great job. So shout out to Nolly Full Cab. Shout out to Racha Sriacha. Other things in there if you want. Hopefully you checked out my Friday night show I did with Travis Holmes. That was Friday night. It's on my channel. Go check it out. It was a good discussion. I got a lot of positive feedback about the discussion. We got into a lot of things with Travis. It was really good. I mean, I love having Travis on. He's like one of my favorite people to talk to. We got into all things, everything. I mean, we talked about the different coaches, the coordinators. We talked about the current state of the Jags. We got into some deep stuff. So make sure to check that video out after this one. But since you're here now, get into the comments. Let me know. I'm going to hit a couple comments, and then I want to go into some of the coaches and talk about kind of their schemes and what it might look like. Robbie Sanders was the first one in the chat, and he was here around like 8:30. So he was here pretty early. So he says, yo, what up? Seabreacher says, what up? How's it going? Robbie Sanders goes on to say, getting ready for this. Robert Atzert says, what's up? DJM says, Jason's on. Seabreacher, who I forgot to mention, is the first channel member in the chat as well. He's a channel member. He says Civ 7 hype, which is funny because I was playing a little Civ 6 earlier today. I don't know. I get a little itch sometimes. Fun game. We'll say. Aiden Tobin says, you're. Callie Jag says, who's it going to be, fellas? All right. That's why I want to hear from you guys. Who's it going to be? Do you genuinely think it's going to be Ben Johnson? Rubicon Racer says, yo. Stray Studio says, woo. A lot of onomatopoeias here tonight. Rubicon Racer says, probably the worst hire possible. Talking about Robert Salah. That's fair. Ben Johnson, save us, please. Callie Jag says, you want some stability and someone that's going to hold this team accountable. I like that, Callie. I do like that. Super Bowl predictions, anyone? Lions look good. Probably why we interviewed both of their coordinators. Matthew McCray says, what's up, boys? Redskins versus Chiefs. I don't know if the Redskins are still a team, but I understand the sentiment with the Commanders. Capone says that would be a great lit game for real. RM Skip, second channel member, says what's happening. Not much. We're going to be talking about the different coaches and what they do and who we've interviewed. And so this is who we've interviewed so far. We interviewed Robert Saleh. We interviewed Aaron Glenn, Steve Spagnuolo, Patrick Graham, Ben Johnson. We still have to interview Liam Cohen, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore, Todd Monken. Brian Flores is a new name that's kind of coming out recently, which is hilarious because me and Travis, and I guess the grammatically correct way to say that would be Travis and I, talked about Brian Flores a good amount because even before the news of Brian Flores coming out today about the interview, potential hiring, I brought up Brian Flores because I like Brian Flores a lot. And I think he's a great culture guy. I know I say that word all the time. I say culture guy all the time. You guys are sick of hearing about it, but I'm a big culture guy. Obviously, I'd want Ben Johnson. I mean, the Lions are first in points scored and second in total yards. If you can get, and he's done it over a body of work. If you can get that guy, get that guy. Like, I'm not an idiot. I'm just looking realistically. If we can't get Ben Johnson, I would rather have one of these culture guys than one of these coordinators who have a little bit left to show me. Liam Cohen's only done it for 1 year. Todd Monken, yes, did it at Georgia with Stetson Bennett, but I feel like I could call plays with Lamar Jackson. Some of these other guys, Joe Brady, he's got Josh Allen. I mean, that dude's a generational quarterback. Kellen Moore, that Eagles system is like humming. So I think it's more a Sirianni system than a Kellen Moore. system. But whatever, we can get into that later. I like these culture guys, and I brought up Brian Flores because I like Brian Flores a lot. He got a raw deal in Miami, obviously everything that went down. I actually asked Travis, and I'm not going to speak for him. I'll let you listen to his answer because I thought it was a great answer. I asked Travis, do you think his lawsuit against the NFL, because he sued the NFL for racial discrimination when he was in Miami, I asked him, do you think that it would hurt his chances, or do you think like whatever? And he gave a great answer. So go back and check out that show for Friday night. I like Brian Flores a lot. I really do. Let me get caught up on these. Rated Shogun Pokey443 on Twitch, who has been on Twitch a little bit. So check Pokey out on Twitch. Robert Astor says, I think we should keep our special teams coaches. I mean, it would be dumb not to. And actually, some of the guy, like one guy we interviewed is a guy that has been retained. Patrick Graham has been retained through a lot of different coaching staffs. When he was in New York, Brian Dable retained him, and then he moved on and went with Josh McDaniels to the Raiders. And when McDaniels was fired, he was retained by Antonio Pierce. So Patrick Graham's a guy we're gonna look at kind of what he does. He's a Bill Belichick disciple. I actually wasn't very informed on Patrick Graham until I started doing a little bit of research, and I kind of like him more. Mainly the Bill Belichick disciple thing. We'll get more into him in a second. But yeah, retain the special teams coaches for sure. John Tom says, Jason, if Shad offered you a one-on-one meeting with him to discuss how to improve the Jaguars, what would you say to him and what would your priorities be? Great question. Very, very good question. I would be candid with him. I try to be frank, and I would try to say the most important thing about this franchise is that, I've said this before, we have a losing culture. That's a real thing. You look at teams like the Jets, losing culture. You look at teams all across the league, whether you go to the Raiders, whether you go to the Vikings. I know the Vikings had a lot of wins, but they're the oldest. I saw this yesterday, the oldest franchise across any of the pro sports that haven't won a Super Bowl. Sometimes you get a stink on you, and it's a real thing. It's a real thing. So I would say, why do you not bring in these culture shifting guys? When you look at the guys he's brought in as hires, Gus Bradley, great coordinator. I get it. He could have been a culture shifting guy, but more of a raw guy more of a player's coach than a culture shifter. Doug Marrone, retained, more of a player's coach than a culture shifter. Urban Meyer, I guess, tried to change the culture, but I'd almost give him a pass on Urban Meyer because I think every Jags fan wanted Urban Meyer. So I'll give him a pass. Didn't work out. Got rid of him in that season. That's fine. Doug Peterson, player's coach, offensive guy, Super Bowl winning record, but not a culture changer. Like, we just need a guy. Like, the best example I can give is the Lions. The Lions had the exact same losing stink that the Jags have. The exact same. They bring in Dan Campbell, culture changer. That team is nowhere even close to where they used to be for decades. It wasn't a flashy offensive coordinator. It wasn't even a guy who can come out there and like call defensive plays amazingly. There's a guy who came in there and held people accountable. Someone already said that. Held people's feet to the fire and get them excited to play Lions football. I would ask Shad, why has he not explored that avenue? I would also ask him, how much say does Tony Khan have in this team? Because I can't get over the fact that Tony Khan has been the common denominator even more so than Trent Baalke. Rubicon Racer says, I want Ben. Be happy with Cohen or Glenn. Honestly, whatever one puts their foot down and says they want Baalke gone is my guy. Very good, very good. And behind Ben Johnson, I wouldn't mind Joe Brady because nobody thought Bills with no wide receivers would ball out. That's a good point. And like he is a good player. I mean, he's a good coordinator, and the receivers haven't been great, but Josh Allen is really freaking good. He is really freaking good. Aiden Thomas says, this stuff Dilla's been saying is crazy. Balky trying to tell Shad he can't wait for Ben or the team will fall behind. Dilla is typically in the know. I have nothing but good things to say about him. I hope Shad Khan's a little smarter than that. Capone says, I would love Joe Brady. He was the LSU coordinator. That's a good point. I didn't mention that. He was. That team was insanely stacked, though. Joe Burrow, Jordan Jefferson, who was the other receiver? That was, I mean, they were just stacked, absolutely stacked. Matthew McCray, been the first time in a while I've been able to catch a live stream. I've been groomed for middle school AD position. All the work not to pay off an AD. Been really busy. Hope you all been good. Hey, man. Middle school AD position is the first step before the next one. If I could make a recommendation, there is an organization called the NIAAA. National Intercollegiate Athletic Association, and they can like certify you with all these athletic director certifications and professional development, and that goes a long way when getting jobs in the future in athletic administration. So look into that. The NIAAA. Google it; it'll come up. Robert Atzer. Mike McCarthy did go 12-5 3 years in a row. Mike McCarthy is out there. That's a good point. Did not bring him up. That's a good point. Venom says, hard no on Flores. Same treatment Tua got will be in store for T-Law. Going to butt heads, act the tough guy, complain about these kids. Okay. That's fine. That's a good point, and that's fine. And that's okay. That's okay. So Salah has a better DC is no, but Flores is lesser DC is fine. Just give Khan Balky's report card. Yeah, I did. You know, I should send him their report card. Because that was a well thought out report card. All right, a couple more comments, and we'll get into some of these coaches. Aiden Tobin, apparently if Cohen tells Shad he wants his own GM, Shad won't have much of a choice. Again, I like Cohen. I just worry that his lack of I mean, it's hard to just not draw the comparison between Bobby Slowick having that one great year and Liam Cohen. Although, and another thing that gave me a reservation is how Liam Cohen's bounced between the NFL and college. He hasn't stayed anywhere for any sustained amount of time. He's bouncing a year after year after year, bouncing between teams. Don't love that. Doesn't mean he's a bad coach, but I just don't love that. DJM says, Jason's on. What up, DJM? Seabridger says, left or right curve? I'm hoping I don't know what you're talking about with that. I'm hoping I don't. Teal Taliban says, I just want what we deserve. And a bunch of emojis. Should we get Coach O? No. Maybe it's like an assistant head coach. Definitely a culture guy. No curve. Okay. Tony Khan, the common. Ooh, I like that, Daniel. I like that. Pete Carroll, kind of intriguing. He's just so old. I mean, how old is Pete Carroll? I mean, he's just Pete Carroll age 73. Pretty old. I mean, if he's here for 4 years, he's 77. I don't know. Ray Agnew's GM and Brunel would come with Ben. That'd be good. All right, let's jump into some of these coaches here. All right, so like I said, we interviewed Robert Saleh today. He's got a mixed reviews online. He's got people that are like, he got a bad deal in New York because he had all those different coordinator changes. He had Mike LaFleur, who I like. Then they got rid of Mike LaFleur to bring in Nate Hackett because Aaron Rodgers wanted Nate Hackett. And before Aaron Rodgers, they had Mike White and Zach Wilson. And there was that whole debacle of who should start. And then the locker room was like splitting between White and Wilson. And then you bring in Rodgers, and Rodgers kind of can demand whatever he wants. That's a lot. That's a lot. He does like to play 4 down linemen. Doesn't blitz very often. He likes to sink back into like a handful of coverages. He kind of, in my opinion, needs to have a good team around him. So he's not what I would call innovative with his blitzes and coverage disguising. He's not a guy who's going to do crazy things. He's going to just run a couple of concepts that look a little bit different and then trust the players to play well. I mean, you remember his team, he had Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, Carl Lawson, Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, Solomon Thomas, Michael Clemens. I mean, he had good players on that defense, and he kind of just sat back behind that. And I guess the most impressive thing about Robert Saleh was that all the players liked him, which that tends to happen in the NFL if you're a player's coach. He's obviously got the Super Bowl winning experience as a defensive coordinator for the Niners. But is he a guy I could get super excited about? No. Is he a guy in that tier that I think the Jags realistically will get? Yes. So I wouldn't be thrilled about it. But the Jags did say they completed the interview today, which I don't love this. The transparency. I get it. You want to have transparency with your fans, but we've completed our interview. Like, we don't just tell us you interviewed him. We don't need to know. Or just tell us that you're bringing them in. We don't need to know that the interview is complete. Like, that's a little bit too much there. All right. So I'm super excited because I'm about to bring in a radio legend here, an absolute radio. I mean, when I say radio legend, I mean, if you listen to the fifth quarter or you listen to anything Jags local radio, you have heard Scotty. He may come in with different names. He may even come under the pseudonym Jason sometimes, just as a little tricky there. But welcome to the first time on the show. And a good friend of mine, Scotty Brightlight. Scotty, how's it going, man? Is everything working? The mic, everything working for you?
I think so. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Man, I couldn't agree more with exactly what you just said about Salah. I mean, he couldn't clean up that circus in New York, and I don't know that I'm confident that he can clean up this circus down here either. Kind of got steamrolled by Rodgers, like you said, and then we kind of got that problem with the offensive coordinator. I mean, if he hires an offensive coordinator and they get it right, then that guy could be gone in a year or two, and then Trevor's on his 8,000th offense. So I couldn't agree more with what you said. But no, super stoked to be on here for the first time, brother. But wanted to give you your flowers on that one because I couldn't agree with you more. Is it something that the Jags would do? Yes, is bring that guy in. But I'm with you. I'm kind of hoping for some different results than Salah.
So in your ideal world, I'm guessing you'd go with Ben Johnson, obviously. Is that not the case? And if that is the case, who's like your second guy?
So I've been, the more I think about it, the more I don't know. I really like Ben Johnson. He's going to check all those boxes that they want. It's an unpredictable offense. He runs so much cool trick plays, turned Jared Goff into a star when that guy was just a cast off not long ago. I like the idea that he could possibly bring in his own GM and put Balky on the back burner as a VP or whatever they want to do there, because that's obviously not working either. Especially if Balky's a must keep for him. My only drawback is that he's just not been a head coach, but then there goes that same thing. How do you get experience if you don't get a shot at it? So I just, I hope that it's not just Dan Campbell that brings the swagger and the edge to that team. Like, if he can bring that swagger and the edge to Jacksonville, I am all in for Ben Johnson because he checks every other box. But I'm just a little worried that he's not going to be the biting the kneecaps guy around here to kind of set that tone with the players. Other people, I mean, I was talking to you about this the other day. I mean, I kind of like Cliff Kingsbury. I like what he's done with this Jaden Daniels kid in his first year. I mean, that kid is having arguably almost the same type of season as Lamar had in his rookie year, almost better. And that's something to say. I mean, the Commanders have been a stinker forever. And I don't think it's Dan Quinn's doing. We've seen him everywhere else. The offense is humming, and I don't know. I kind of like Kingsbury a little bit too. I don't know. I'm not particularly excited about really any one person. I think that there can be a few good hires here, but we're all still kind of rolling the dice a little bit on a lot of these names too.
So I like some of those names you've mentioned. I do want to circle back to Ben Johnson for a second because I think you brought up some good points about him not being a guy who's ever done it. But like you said, you can't do it unless you're given the chance. I do love that he does a lot of motion offense. I love that he does the pre-snap shifts. He uses packages that are designed for the individual players. I mean, we've seen offensive linemen catch touchdown passes in his
That's
offense.
awesome.
So he definitely does that for sure. Does it give you any reservation that his team is kind of like a superstar sort? So when you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery, not even mentioning the offensive line of Taylor Decker, Graham Glasnow, Frank Ragnow, Kevin Zeitler, and Penei Sewell. Does it give you any reservation that he might just have one of the best offensive teams that's like been assembled in a long time? Like, does that come into your brain at all? Or do you think maybe those guys have gotten that recognition because of Ben Johnson?
1,000%. And I think the same can be said with someone like Todd Monken, and the same can be said with someone like Joe Brady. I mean, how good are they compared to some of the superstars that they have, and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson? I agree, the talent is way outside with Detroit. They're unbelievable, but that kind of goes back to, I think we also have more than just a head coaching problem here. I mean, I was watching the Rams game last night, and I'm just watching all these 5th-round picks, and I'm looking at like who the Jags have drafted. I mean, they got like Kyron Williams on LA. They got Jared Verse. I mean, that team was supposed to be left for dead after they won the Super Bowl, and they've already rebuilt the darn thing in 2 years. I mean, I think if that doesn't scream we have a little bit of a GM problem, then I don't know what does. But that's kind of why I am for Ben Johnson, because if he can get somebody from Detroit that knows how to build a roster like that, then we're in good shape. As long as he can call plays and we can get a couple more studs in here. Like, I feel like we have some good players. I feel like we don't have great players like they do in Detroit. BTJ is a really, he's probably our great player, but I mean, everybody's been talking about this for years between Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker. We've got 2 people on defense that are constantly creating pressure here in Jacksonville, and they seem to manufacture new guys left and right. After Aaron Donald in LA, they can find people in the draft. We can. So I think we have a 2-headed monster problem here, I think. But if Ben Johnson can come in here with enough swagger and convince Shaw that, put him in a VP role, bulky that is, and let me bring my guy in here to pick the talent, because look at what we've done in Detroit in a short period of time versus what Bulky's done in 6-7 years. Let him do it.
I think you bring up a good point with if he's able to supplant Trent Baalke from this team, I think
it's almost more ideal than anything.
Yeah, I think that would be great. A little side question for you. Does it piss you off at all that you didn't get to see Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk in the college football playoff after seeing what they've done in the NFL? Does that piss you off a little bit that they were snubbed from the college football playoff last year?
Oh, a little bit, buddy. A little bit. I'm still chapped about that.
A little salty about that, So I don't know. I just thought I'd bring that up a little bit.
Love you.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, obviously everyone's number one's Ben Johnson. I mean, that's how realistic is it? He's going to have his pick of the litter. Any team besides the Patriots, apparently, are offering him the job, and it's his job to take. He can be very picky if he wants to. So if he chooses Jacksonville, great. If he doesn't, we may be stuck with some of these other guys. You mentioned Cliff Kingsbury. I'm a big Aaron Glenn fan, obviously from the same defense, from the same Lions team. I will say, I do love Aaron Glenn because I think he's a great players coach. I think he could be a culture guy for sure. I will say, though, I mean, Aaron Glenn kind of leans on his corners a lot, with Carlton Davis bringing him in, Amik Robertson, and obviously Terrion Arnold from Alabama. They played a lot of cover one. They played a lot of man. If Aaron Glenn came here, would you be okay with it? And would it be an absolute shoo-in that we take a corner with our first pick if that were to happen?
To be frank, he's probably one of my top 3 guys that I'd like to see here, because I think he would bring that edge and that nasty that we need around here, that attitude. You mentioned all the schemes that he runs. I mean, he's been doing it a lot with a lot of injured players as well. I mean, there's been a lot of folks that have gone down throughout this year, and that defense still is fired up every week and are playing very well. My only drawback, and I seem to be finding this with every single coach that we're going to talk about, I can't find one that checks all the boxes. And the main one that he doesn't check for me is the same problem that I keep going back to, which is why I want a Ben Johnson or an offensive guy, is whoever he brings in here to coach the offense. If they fix the offense, then we might be in the same boat where Trevor has a new offensive coordinator again, because they did such a good job with Trevor and turned it around so fast here that now Trevor has another offensive coordinator once again. So like, that's the box that I can't check with him, because I don't know who he would bring in as an OC and him primarily be a defensive guy. And if it was almost any other year, I would say I'd be okay with a defensive guy, because historically that's the only time the Jaguars seem to be doing very well or make it to the playoffs is when we have a pretty good defense. But I think we really do got to fix this Trevor Lawrence problem here. Otherwise, we're going to have bigger ones down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I keep coming back to as well. I think that's well said. I'm with you there. That's a great point. I want to hit a couple of these comments here on that we have in the chat here. We have Stephen Giles says, so if we end up hiring Bill O'Brien and keep Balky, I'm just going to make like Captain Kirk and yell Khan. I don't think Bill O'Brien, I mean, that was a troll job done on Twitter. That was from the last hiring cycle. I don't think he's actually being interviewed, Stephen, but that is a good point. You could do a little Captain Kirk reference there. Capone says Liam Cohen betting favorite, Ben Johnson plus 25, Todd Monken plus 600, Slowick plus 600, Bill Belichick plus 600. That's old. It's got to be old.
Yeah, Belichick.
Yeah, Belichick and Darrell Bevel plus 300. There's no way.
What does Spags do for you?
Good. Okay. Okay, so here's how I feel about Spags. I do like that he has had a lot of success, and obviously the Chiefs have leaned on their defense all year. He runs a lot of man. Our team's built right now to play a lot of man. He did have Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed, who are corners, two better corners than we have on the roster. You can miss me with that Tyson Campbell stuff. I'm still not convinced. Disguises coverages. He blitzes pretty often. The thing that I like about Spags the most, the number one thing I like about him is that the halftime adjustments he makes at the game. I was looking at a stat where like he's like the best halftime adjustment defensive coordinator that's like ever lived or something like that. Last year when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, like the last half of the games of the season, they gave up like 4 points per game in the second half. Like these dudes, like this dude knows how to make adjustments. And I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to a coach. He's a little bit up there in age, and I think I would have the same reservations that you have about a defensive guy coming in. And I'm not necessarily sure that he could be that culture guy that comes in and makes the changes that I would want from a defensive coach. That would be my only reservations about him. I like everything about him besides the fact that I'm not too confident that he could be a good head coach, because we've seen people from that Andy Reid system don't typically work out well. So that would be my reservations. What are your thoughts on Spags?
He checks a lot of boxes, doesn't he? But for what it is, I hate to say he doesn't do it for me, because I feel like it's almost Doug Peterson 2.0. Like, he's had a lot of success. Andy Reid, everything that you just said, you just described Peterson. At least up until he was here in the Jaguars. But I mean, Peterson was making good adjustments, Philly special. I mean, it's still legendary to this day. I mean, winning games, it's just, I feel almost the same thing. Like, is he he's obviously not too old. He's still relevant. But I just don't know if he gets it done for me, just because it almost feels like hiring Peterson 2.0.
Yeah, I'm looking at his age right now. He's 73. Again, another 73-year-old. I just don't really want a mid 70-year-old as a head coach. Just because if he does have sustained success, he's going to be 77 in 4 years, and that's just kind of getting up there. I know people like Pete Carroll; he's up there too. Bill Belichick, he's up there too. But those guys are proven. Those guys are Super Bowl winning head coaches. Spags isn't quite that. The actual betting odds from Aiden Tobin is Cohen minus 110, Ben Johnson plus 110, Salah plus 600, Brady plus 600, Glean plus 700, and McCarthy plus 1,200. I will say about the betting odds, though, is every day they're changing. So I won't get too hung up on the betting odds because it was Ben Johnson like 4 days ago. Now it's Cohen. So they're changing quickly. So we'll see. says we need to just give up. The Texans are running the division for years to come. Slowick isn't head coach ready either at all. I'm all in on Aaron Glenn. Honestly, I am too. And I think a big part of it is for me, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Scott, because this is a very polarizing issue with Jags fans. And I've made some enemies here. And I've tried to make it as diplomatic as possible, but I've made some enemies. And your point about Trevor being the franchise guy, obviously we're paying him franchise money, bringing in an offensive coordinator that can make Trevor work. I'm slowly, not saying I'm off the train, but I'm slowly moving toward the back of the train on Trevor Lawrence over the last 2 years. I still think he has all the intangibles. I think he has all the talent in the world, but he's obviously lacking severe decision-making skills. He is overthinking things. He's lost his ability to get outside the pocket and run. Are you worried at all about Trevor Lawrence going forward, or do you think he's just gone through a series of bad coaches and teams where he's not been able to shine his potential?
Oh man, what a great question. So I think the answer lies a little bit in between both. I think if I was on here last year, I think I'd probably be public enemy number one because I said we shouldn't have paid him. I said that we should have let him play out this year. We probably would have had a $30 million a year quarterback instead of 50, freeing up more cap space. But water under the bridge. So my line of thinking is we're stuck with him right now at least. So let's do it. Let's throw the Hail Mary and fix him. Talking about the number one betting favorite is Liam Cohen, right? I mean, look at Baker Mayfield's stats this year. I'm looking at him right now. 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns. I mean,
how many picks, though?
16.
Which is not a ton, but yeah.
But if we could get production like that out of him, it's not, here's the thing. I think there's about 3 tiers of quarterbacks in the league. Well, more than that, but what we're talking about here, you have Patrick Mahomes, and then he's tier 1. And then you already know, your Josh Allens, your Lamar Jacksons, your Joe Burrows. Joe Burrow arguably in the same tier with Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, but definitely at least tier 2. And then you start going down the line. You got Justin Herbert. You got all these other guys that are kind of mid, if you will, as the kids use these days. But Sam Darnold, I mean, he was looking like a stud up until the last 2 weeks of the year. Coaching matters, Baker Mayfield, another one, obviously we're talking about, put up some unbelievable numbers this year. Who's the other one in the NFC that had some numbers? Oh, Jared Goff, of course. I mean, Ben Johnson's made gold out of somebody that was, again, a cast-off. So I think if we get the right guy for Trevor, I think he's still fixable. But I mean, I'm also in the boat as you. Like, I don't know that this guy's a world beater either, but I think if we get him the right help, he could make us competitive enough to get us over the hump. So that's why I lean a little bit more towards the offensive side.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think you're right. I always go back to, I wonder, like, would I rather have a Dan Campbell type guy and bring in an OC, or gamble on an OC and just hope he's what fixes Trevor? Because Doug Peterson was supposed to fix Trevor. Urban Meyer was supposed to be the guy for Trevor. We've had these offensive guys that are supposed to come in and fix Trevor and do these things. And maybe it's not an offensive guy that needs to fix Trevor. Maybe it's a culture guy that needs to come in and fix this entire team. And then Trevor will elevate with the team. And that's the battle I have back and forth between the two. You talked about coaches not checking all the boxes. Well, that's the position that you're in when you're hiring a head coach, because all the coaches that check all the boxes are currently employed by football teams. Right. So the last guy that we haven't talked about really is that we have interviewed. Obviously, we still have to interview Liam Cohen, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore, Todd Monken, Brian Flores, potentially Mike McCarthy. But the last guy we have interviewed, we haven't talked about, is Patrick Graham. Currently,
why
Raiders
are we interviewing him?
What?
Why are we interviewing him?
So and I thought the same thing.
That's the name. Like, I'm trying to understand.
So I thought the same thing. And then when I look him up, he's actually still employed by the Raiders. Like, he hasn't been fired yet. And I was like, that's weird, because usually when a head coach gets fired, everyone else does as well. Graham's tenure is he gets retained by everybody. He got retained by Brian Daboll. Then he moved on with Josh McDaniels. He got retained by Antonio Pierce. So he's a guy that, like, people just love having around. I talked about it earlier before you got on. He's a Bill Belichick disciple. He came up through Bill Belichick's defense. People talk about how he approaches the game and film and strategy the same way Bill Belichick does. He took the Raiders defense from 31st in the league to 12th, with the Raiders spending the second least amount of money on free agents and contracts. And that's including the Chandler Jones contract they took on, and Chandler Jones never played. So this guy knows how to maximize what he has on his team. Little bit older, not as old as the other guys, but another guy that I think kind of fits into that Aaron Glenn mold, but has a little bit more success with developing a defense. So does a guy like that do anything for you, or does that just kind of get washed into kind of the other guys?
I think he's in even a below tier than that. I mean, we just named a bunch of losers that he's worked for. I mean, I don't care if the Giants love him. The Giants haven't done anything. I don't care if the Raiders love him and want him back. They haven't done anything. So to me, if we're going to go on like a gamble on a guy like that, maybe recency bias from what I just saw the other night. But I mean, what about Chris Shula?
I mean, if we're going to go down that train,
that he's a McVay guy. I am high on McVay guys. I love that coaching tree. Seems like everywhere they go, they seem to be able to fix stuff. Although they just blew it in Minnesota, but I mean, who would have saw them ever be? I mean, they were projected to be fourth in the division, and they ended up, almost being first. If it wasn't for that Detroit game, so I mean, I know they got bounced early, but that's a heck of a turnaround. And anybody under that McVay tree, I seem to like. I mean, he rebuilt that defense in LA with all those young guys after Aaron Donald was getting out of there and retiring. I mean, and that defense has been giving a lot of people a lot of problems. I mean, freaking Grandpa is one of the greatest coaches of all time too, so I'm sure you can lean on. I mean, I like that name too. It's a little bit of a different one. I'm sure that's not going to ever happen. I think we'll probably get Salah over him, but just an interesting one to kind of think about.
I mean, that's how I feel about Mike LaFleur. I mean, he had that short tenure with the Jets, but he followed Kyle Shanahan everywhere. Salah took him to the Jets because he took him from that 49ers Mike Shanahan tree. And the second that he was fired for Nate Hackett, Sean McVay snatched him up, and he's the current offensive coordinator for the Rams. And we saw what they did last night. So that's it. I mean, I feel like both Shula and LaFleur are names that we're saying that are probably a year away from the coaching cycle, which is unfortunate because I feel like you said with Shula, I feel like Mike LaFleur will be a really good head coach somewhere, and we're just missing out on him by one season. I wish they would just hire him the way that the Vikings surprised hired Kevin O'Connell from the Rams, because McVay was calling the plays, so people didn't give Kevin O'Connell a lot of credit. And then they snatched Kevin O'Connell, and this dude's winning 14 games a season. He failed last night, but like I'm with you there. I'm with you there.
So here's the funny thing that you say about that, though. So let's say Aaron Glenn comes here or something of that nature, right? It doesn't work after year one. We fire Balky, and now Aaron Glenn's a lame duck coach, and then we can just go ahead and, because the new GM is going to want to bring in their own coach more than likely, I would assume.
That's why I think
I mean, this is almost a lame duck job to some extent, unless they fix it.
And I think that's why nobody wants it. And people, and again, I get kickback from a lot of Jags fans, a lot, because I don't say what would make me popular. I will never be that person. I will never be the person that says like what'll get me views or what'll get me likes or what'll get me retweets. I'll never say that. I'm not a sellout. I never have been. I never will be. I'm not going to tote this company line. That's why people are mad about me about Trevor, and I'm rooting for Trevor, but it's no secret the guy's regressing. And then when you look at this team, I have said since the beginning, I don't think anybody wants this job. And everybody's like, oh, it's an attractive job. You got Trevor, you have cap space, you have Brian Thomas Jr. And I get all that, but I just don't think the job is as attractive as people think. That's why I think we're going to end up with this Robert Salah tier. We're going to end up with, I don't think Aaron Glenn comes here. We're going to end up with this tier of guys. I think Patrick Graham was more of a defensive coordinator interview, but I just don't think this job is as attractive as Jags fans think it is, if I'm being real. And so, again, it gets me hate all the time, but I don't care. Like, if I'm a head coach in the NFL, I'm not coming to Jacksonville. I'm going to come work for Balky? Are you kidding me? I'm going to come work for Shad Khan? Absolutely not. So, if you were a coach, where would you rank this Jags job, especially now that the Cowboys job's open? Where would you rank this Jags job amongst jobs that are open?
I think that job throws a monkey wrench in this whole thing. As soon as that job came open today, I was like, oh, man, this is not good. Because that's instantly more attractive. I mean, everybody's, no state taxes in Texas either. I mean, so you don't have to worry about that. I always hear that on the radio. Like, we got such a good thing going for us because no state taxes. Don't get me wrong. It's good for people like me and you, but who cares when you're making millions of dollars?
This is coming from a guy that knows his taxes. I will say that. This is coming from a guy that knows his taxes.
Don't out me. But I think it's an attractive job from the standpoint that there is cap space. Shad's willing to spend money. I don't know how. I mean, from the press conference, it seems like Shad actually is a little bit more involved than I ever actually thought he was when I saw that. But it's gosh, they're gonna hate me, but it's just it's tough for people to win here, and we have this stink about us. And I think without like a full reset and somebody having like full autonomy, it's hard to get that stink off. I mean, this GM is just, that's the part that makes it tough. And I can play the contrarian. I can tell you some good picks that he's made. I mean, he's not absolutely awful, but he's definitely not. I mean, like I was saying, he picks good players. He doesn't pick great players. I mean, we have probably only 2-3 great players. Yeah, it's kind of pushing it.
You get 2? I was like, all right, Scott. All right, I'll give you 2.
I'm trying to.
Then you start raising.
Audience.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
I don't want these guys to kill me the first time I'm on this show. No, I mean, and having a bunch of good guys is not necessarily the worst thing in the world either. But there's something about, again, just watching those games over the weekend, and there's just so many folks that we see. We took Parker Washington over Puka Nacua. I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow right there. And I'm just watching these guys just produce left and right for these other teams, and I think that's a major problem. And I think that's goes back to as old as, as long as you and I've been watching football, one of the oldest lines is, I mean, I can't shop for the groceries. I mean, what are we doing here from Buddy Ryan, or was that Rex Ryan? I can't remember. That was so long ago, but yeah, if you can't, if you're Parcells, what am I talking about? But yeah, if you're not able to shop for the groceries, like, what do you want me to do? And like, that becomes kind of a problem when you see these mistakes being made over and over again. And some of these surefire guys that we're just, now we'll take this guy and then we'll play him at a different position here. Good luck, new coach, on that. It's frustrating the way they utilize personnel and draft and free agency. I mean, that was a stinker last year. I mean, did we get anything out of free agency last year that was worth anything?
No.
Maybe
Mitch Morse. Maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I mean, it's a little difficult. And I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think that we're gonna get a tier 1 guy, unfortunately. But I think it's full send for Ben Johnson, and I hope that Shad Khan listens to him. I don't know. He will, though, because after that press conference, it was pretty clear. Shad's brain trust is literally Trent Baalke and his chief lieutenant that works underneath Trent Baalke. That's the only people that he talks to about football. So I don't know.
Well, I'll get to a couple comments here. Maniac Slap says, gang, gang. Carson Shack, channel member and hard worker, I will say that. Says, on a serious note, I got a notification about Salah buzz for our head coach. Please tell me that's not a probability. Not probably. There's no telling. There's no if every coach says no, then you end up with Robert Salah. I will tell you that. James Wilson says, I think DCs are better at making culture change and getting teams to play complementary football. There's been lots of OCs that fail in totality as a head coaches, managing clocks, timeouts, going forward on 4th down. That's a good point.
Yep.
That's a good point. Robert Rogers says Moore did have some sick play calls in the Eagles game. But I mean, so did Doug Peterson when he was with the Eagles. Just saying. So did Doug Peterson with the Eagles. Volkfang says, you don't think the Chiefs have a good culture because Andy Reid is an offensive guy? You can't set a good culture and be in an X's and you can set a good culture and be an X's and O's offensive guy. Okay. All right.
You can.
I guess the pushback would be you do have Patrick Mahomes on the Chiefs, who may be the greatest quarterback since Tom Brady. And you also have a team who has leaned on their defense the last 2 years. So
and a GM that's smart enough to identify talent in Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that guy wasn't even the first quarterback selected in the round. I mean, look at all these teams that were in the playoffs this year so far. Every one of them is hitting on draft.
Yep, you're right.
Makes it a lot easier to be a coach when you have a good team.
That's a good point. That's a good point. James Don says some examples are Adam Gase, Mike McDaniel, Nathaniel Hackett. Yep. I would feel a little bit better about Salah if he was at least a full year removed from being fired. I think our defense would be better, but it was also better under Caldwell last year. It was really bad this year.
Yeah.
It was really bad this year. But, I mean, I think there's problems within the entire franchise, man. There's just problems from the top down. I mean, when you look at coaches staying at bars, hitting on underage girls, and kickers getting sexual assault charges on planes, and you look at even back to 2018 and the NFLPA saying don't come to Jacksonville. It's a terrible environment. It's just bad all the way around.
Don't forget Amit Patel. My favorite.
Don't forget the DraftKings FanDuel guru.
$22 million.
$22 million. The worst gambler of all time, apparently.
3.5 years he was doing it. Nobody noticed. Gotta love this team.
Exactly. So just top down, issues everywhere. I'm really backed up on comments here. Sorry, guys. I apologize. I'm just going to hit some of these. The safety option is Gruden. No. Joe Brady meshed better with Trevor than most other coaches not named Ben Johnson. I have seen that point. What do you have to say about this? I've read some things online about how Joe Brady would be the best fit because Josh Allen is the most like Trevor Lawrence, and he could put together a team like you talked about earlier, where the offense isn't exactly star-studded outside of the quarterback. So do you think Joe Brady would be the best fit outside of Ben Johnson when it comes to the offensive guys, or do you lean more toward Liam Cohen?
It's a good one. I like who he's worked with throughout the years. Obviously, he's worked with studs, Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Here's the problem: is that's Josh Allen and Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I think we're going back to the same thing that you and I were kind of talking about. I think we're talking about tier 1 and tier 2 quarterbacks, and I think what we honestly have here is a tier 3 until he's able to take that next level. Maybe it is Joe Burrow that can help him do it. Maybe it's Ben Johnson. Maybe it's Liam Cohen. These guys all have excellent track records of doing that. So I'm okay with it. I don't hate it by any means at all. I want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. I think Josh Allen, he's got a different build. He's never getting hurt. Joe Burrow hasn't played with an offensive line the entire time I've watched him in Cincinnati, or a defense for that matter. He's just a different dude than just about anybody else in the NFL in my eyes. I would argue he's almost on the same level as Mahomes, just has a crappier team. These are kind of different dudes to me until I see Trevor take a step in that direction. Don't get me wrong, beating the Chargers when we did, and that comeback win was fantastic. But it was kind of short-lived after Chad Henne marched down the field 94 yards in the championship game and beat us in that year. So I don't see him yet being that guy. And if it is a Joe Brady that can make him click that switch or make the offense a little bit easier for him to understand, which I think is kind of what we need to do. I think we need to simplify things for him, apparently. If he's the guy to do it, I'm about it. Whoever can do it and fix Trevor, I think, is the major thing here.
Well, I think that's the hard part, is finding out who can do that, because we've tried a few different people and it hasn't worked. And doesn't mean it can't be done, just it might be hard to find that guy. The Duval Dive, Travis Holmes is in here. He was on my show Friday night. Like I said, go back and watch that show. It was a great show. I love talking to Travis. I mean, you know what I love about talking with Travis is like the conversations you guys don't even get to see. You're right, offline that we talk about. Travis is a real one. And that's why I give so much. You may think I just gas up Travis all the time, all the people, but it's because I know him on a personal level, and he's a great guy. And I know half of you in the chat are degenerates and not great guys. And so that's why I try to give a little respect to Duval Dive. He said it's easier to find a good DC to pair with an OC than it is to find a good OC. Give me a play caller all day. I did notice just a little bit about Travis is we had this debate about whether Mike LaFleur would have been a good hire, and he was saying all this stuff about we'll see when he's in the playoffs what happens. And I noticed he didn't respond to my tweet this morning after the Rams beat the Vikings. I will say he went a little quiet there, but I won't hold it against him. I will not hold it against him. Maniac Slap says everyone loved the Nielsen hire. Carson Shack says everyone's going on about Liam Cohen, but I don't understand why it's not a red flag that we are one of the only teams to interview him. If he was as good as everyone says, why isn't everyone going after him?
So I can tell you something about that. So one of my closest friends is a Tampa Bay fan, and he listens to them on their local radio all the time. They are scared that they are going to lose him. So, I mean, for whatever that means, they're afraid. They're almost willing to move on from Todd Bowles to keep Liam Cohen from everything that I'm hearing down there, because he kind of does the same thing every year. They're ready for a change and want to kind of promote from within. So that kind of tells me something if the media down there is that hot on them. So just something to think about.
Volkfang says, my thought was that Trevor wants a better run game and Shad wants to be unpredictable. To me, that's Ben Johnson, the Lions offense in spades. Moving on. Wake me up when LaFleur calls a play. Everyone said the same thing about Kevin O'Connell, Duval Dive. Everyone said the same thing, and he led a Sam Darnold-led offense to 14 wins. So that's all I will say about that. All right, a couple more comments, then we're going to wrap up. Maniac Slap says the Rams did make the Super Bowl with Goff, and Goff started off with Jeff Fisher, if I recall. Good point. The Rams got a defensive touchdown and a shirt field touchdown after a turnover on downs. LOL. How is that a feather in LaFleur's cap?
Maybe a Chris Shula one, huh? Yeah.
Hey, Shane, don't bring logic in here, okay? We're riding on emotions, okay? We're riding high on emotions and feelings, all right? Don't bring rationale and logic into here, okay? That is a good point. I mean, I did notice that. They had the defensive touchdown, and they went for it on fourth down. They're on 40. Didn't get it. Hey, listen, how many times have the Jags been in that situation? Turnover, couldn't score. So, still matters. Still matters. Parker Warren says that offensive line lost the game for them last night. Can't put that on Sam. Yeah, your boy Cam Robinson played terrible.
Cam Robinson.
Yeah, played a terrible game last night.
Yeah, you heard his name a few times, didn't you?
Yeah, not good. And yeah. All right, this is what we'll end on. We're gonna end on this one. Lastly, is the Salah buzz just to get his heart and eyes on going to Jags, just to talk to him to being DC?
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, me too. Okay, man, the comments are coming in. All right, one more. Would you guys be super happy with Aaron Glenn if we didn't get BJ? He's great, Ben Johnson. He has a great mentality and a presence. So you kind of said it already, but how these shows go, Scott, is for some reason, as the night goes on later, more people watch. I don't know why people can't get here at 9 p.m. It's not like it's a family time. You're not hanging out with your family at 9 p.m. if you have little kids or something. And we start at 9 p.m. every time. It's not like we start at different times. But for some reason, around 10 p.m. is when the views start coming in. So we're at, between Twitter and YouTube, we're at about 300 people watching. Ben Johnson's clear number one. I know you said a little bit earlier. Oh, yeah, and Duval Dive, you're right. Okay, wait, I get two questions for you. Two questions. First question, who's your number two? Give us it again. Number two, if Ben Johnson's off the board, if Ben Johnson goes to the Cowboys, who do you want as the Jags head coach amongst all the people we've interviewed?
So, man, it's tough. It's close. It's probably between Monken and Aaron Glenn. Joe Brady's close to it as well. I feel like they're all right there. It's hard to put, like, to me it's number one, and then it's 2A, 2B, 2C. Like, I could be happy with any of those. And I wouldn't mind. I don't know. I'm not going to be in that interview room, but I still am not opposed to Cliff. I'm gonna die on that. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is done yet. And the fact that the Commanders are doing what they're doing right now with a rookie quarterback, I like to see that.
All right, last question for you. And this is something we do. We actually do this a lot on this show because, we're more than just Jags commentators. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of your life, Scott, when you die, if all you have to show for it is your opinions on the Jags, you're not going to be happy with that. Yeah, everyone's got an opinion. So what we do here on this show is we go a little above and beyond just the Jags, and we always try to get. And this is not fair because I didn't prep you on this, but we always get people that come on, or we get guests, or we get people. What's the single greatest life lesson, quote, words that you live by, something that changed your life as a person, something you try to live by? You don't have to overthink it, but what's something that has affected you, or that you would want to give to the chat as something that's like a life lesson that you've learned that's really helped you?
Yeah, man, you really didn't prep me on that one at all. But
I did not. Scott had no idea this was coming.
I swear to God, no. I mean, gosh, just to think of it right off the rip. I mean, just treat others the way that you like to be treated. I feel like there's so much, hate going on about just about everything. You can pick a topic, it doesn't matter. Just respect each other. It's okay to have opinions. It's okay to rip people too, but just be respectful of it. I do the same thing. I rip this Jags team every week on the fifth quarter, but I don't see me going breaking into their houses while they're out, in an away game. You don't see me doing that kind of stuff. So, I mean, just be respectful, treat others the way you want to be treated. The 10 Commandments aren't a bad way to live your life, whether you're religious or not. You really can't go wrong with that.
I like it. And it's ironic, is I think that's my greatest piece of advice, life lesson that I give, is that exact thing, is treat others you want to be treated. I think that's my favorite line. It is also biblical. It's from the Jesus was the first one to say it. So that is pretty cool. So thank you, Scott. I think that was a great, that was a great word of advice. Typically we pump people's like social medias and like YouTube channels, but Scott isn't that type of guy. He isn't. He's just a guy who seems to be on the radio often, whether it be anonymous or unanonymous. He's on there a lot. But Scott, appreciate your time here tonight. It's fun talking Jags with you. We'll be excited to see what happens with the Jags going forward. I will be on probably tomorrow night with UCF Jaguar and Jordan DeLugo on his channel for Club Jaguar, I think. And then maybe Friday night with Travis. We'll see what happens. But thank you to all the people that were here in the chat. I really appreciate it. 300 people here live right now, which is great. So I appreciate everyone that's here. Keep hope, boys. Don't give up. It's going to be good. We have a team in Jacksonville. We always have that for at least 30 more years. So we'll take that.
There we go.
Thank you to everyone here. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. See you guys later. As always, go Jags.
Appreciate it. Much love.